Sangye shing tumi te muwa Trakun namda shing la choka Idam guru ratna mandala kam niryataya.
Chua Mindo.
Mindo.
Ta. Kunjung Denpa de la Tara Ni Shagayo de Yuba.
Kunjung.
Kunjung Denpa la Ragwa de Karesana. Ne Kansan Danzi Ragwa ta. He Tani Jive Doja ta Le ta. Tuzu Kunjung Denpa Ragwa.
Two origins, a gross and subtle level. The gross level grasping at the self of persons and all of the negative emotions that arise from that.
Ta Tamo de Karalab de ne. Denpa do. Chui Danzi Yoro.
Yep.
Chuk Danzi Tangbe. Chuk Danzi Tangbe. Ta. Ma Tinjuwe Tumu Moyinbe Nyumo. Ti Tangbe ne Doja Shidan Kondongaje. Ti Tangbe Le. Tuzu. 아니 참 잘그러다.
Subtle, the level of true origins would be clinging to the true existence of phenomena, or phenomena inducing that in one's mind, and then from the middle way consequentialist point of view, all of the afflicted mental states that arise from that, desire, jealousy, and all of that.
다들 곡된라 차라니 얘기요냐. 와, 단다 간산 단지다. 간산한 제도에 제지미 짐바당. 아니 티 장비 되자시다. 디게 방바디. 아니 곡된 락바르와다.
And then true cessations also is going to have two levels to it, a gross level and a subtle level of abandonment. The gross level of abandonment would be to abandon clinging to the person as being self-sufficient and substantially existent, and all of the referent disturbing emotions that arise from that. So those are the objects of abandonment on a gross level.
다 참모디 아니 추단지 랑원에 두고 간사랑원에 두고 짐바 방배디 파자다죠 방바들라 아니 고된 참모 차그러다.
And then the subtle objects of abandonment in terms of true cessations would be to cling to phenomena being inherently existent, and the person therein being inherently existent, and the imprints of doing so. That's the subtle level of true cessations in terms of what is to be abandoned.
다 누스체 다든데 진행하서 고보 원데체 제발라 다 고딩이 체조되게 신용도 장가라 아니 녀모방배 방바당 다 대가랑저 뒤인 곰데스 스캐니나네 수수냠뇨데데 연구로와네 디 다지 용사리로 뒤주 간산질라다 지 용사리 삼삼인데 중나 수수냠뇨부터네 데데스인데로 충분히나네 먼저 지 곰자야당 칸되치야당 두절라야 강예매와당 다디 직전에 직도 직 연구도 재산 다 제고도 수수쌤 나네 주 준비 내용도네 곰자야당 칸되치야당 두절라 강예매와
Okay.
연구에서 땅은 저는 망보지 칸되는데 주릉부 체대도 산산란데 곰데데 잡자는 디네가라 수수쌤 시월에 가져도 상당하더라.
Okay.
쌤 시월이야라 삼로당당 지도 거르면서 지금 변조 만용다 즉 튼진 지튼진의 쇼쇼라래 요말 수수 삼로당당 지금 수수 쌤 시월서 다직 소에 직도 더 용사래 다직 제고도 사네 수수 쌤 나네 주 구마당야지 용거를 대용나 아니 간도연다 내 주릉부 가져체는 갈래카에메 뇨베메 근데 잘 펜도 좀 여러 왔어.
So then understanding those levels or attributes of true cessations is important for us, because then we start to realize through our meditation what are the afflictions that we have to abandon and we start to get some experience in our meditation that is the case, they are to be removed. And just that level of experience, we do meditations, we do our practice, our daily sadhanas, and they can be, if we put effort into it, they become easier in the sense that if you're meditating correctly or doing the sadhana, you might pause from time to time and recognize that the mind is in a peaceful state or blissful state. Now, such a recognition is a mental attitude. You're not going to recognize these peaceful states of mind with wealth or any kind of external support as a kind of cause. It is a mental peace that comes with experience, and once we get used to increasing it, it becomes easier and easier.
세상다 도세 디 디시나네 당보 동해dim에 체주 시디들라 삼나고 당연되네. 지 수수미다고 임바당 최탐제다 가라 따고 덴복해 매와. 뒤제 탐제 미다고 왔어야 되다. 용고여와. 아니 사제 탐제 동해 왔어야 돼. 용고여와. 은 최탐제 동신 다음에 왔어야 돼. 용고여래. 때네다 직겨와 미다고 삼나야고래나 규단 찐래 되네. 규진대야 야야야 두두두. 겨와 디지고 규진만 봐. 겨왕아만에 규진 몽버지요. 근데 야 시행되네. 겨왕아지라. 거대면실이야. 겨왕아지 외에들 이지로 질레비나. 아니 도세도 셈제 탐제다 라니를 거디 침부래. 다 두절다 동해 잔자래샤. 다 디제 동해다 태워진게 최고도 삼. 다 신도. 아니 지 닝질이야. 닝제 동해다 태워게 최고도 세. 동해 텐도기 닝지. 겸도기 닝지들이야. 다 시림라고디 주부충우다 주부팅람 냠린 도그레스야 돼. 다 내가로지. 근데 요래스로 하는 다 신고야 지금.
Okay. That's why it is important from the context of the Four Noble Truths for us to meditate on these first four attributes of the truth of suffering, thinking how one is impermanent, and then secondly, that things are in the nature of dissatisfaction. It is, isn't it? Like it is set forth in the four seals. All compound things are impermanent. The nature of feelings is contamination. There's emptiness as well. So that's important because if we put it in context of making progress, on that impermanence level, we start to think that this life that we are experiencing is a product of causes and conditions. And tracing it back, those causes and conditions, we'll trace them back to previous lives. When one starts to develop a stable conviction in past lives, then you start to see how we are interdependent on other living beings. And in that sense, one can start to think on other living beings' relationship to oneself and how that they are going through suffering. So one starts to generate compassion for them and want to generate a mind to protect them, to help them, bringing in those things. So this is how we reflect on the stages accordingly.
아니 타르바다 곡된 양타고 지금이야. 곡된라. 곡된 lokba shubala. 근데 제베이나 디기어 말에 단지 곡된 그 lok슈 시디 시줄하도와.
Okay.
되는 마셰션나다. 곡된 게 체주 시디 두세 마셰. 다 되게 lokshuk시 되다 미디움바시여와. 대 아직 신나야고요라.
And also with regards to the liberated state itself, there are four mistaken consciousnesses with regard to it. Important to recognize those so as not to make mistakes.
다 곡된 게 로슈 당보디 아니 타르와 예메드 짐바스르와 곡베게 동해 곡베 로슈를 가려는 걸라 되네 타르와 요 말했다 타르와 예메드 짐바 와 타르와 춘에 요 말했다
Kisa di lamdeni marwa, taparwa, kokdenirwa.
곡된 로슈
Okay. So the first mistaken awareness with regards to the first attribute of true cessations would be to think or to cling to the notion that cessation doesn't exist.
Tarbasita kokden Quran lamna digri.
Yeah, it is not possible to get true cessation.
다드네 니 고과시 시와 세야디 사제기 켜와 가식담 타르바진 바스디 다데리잖아. 단다 나가타에 남시대 GM이 시지도조 아니 타바진 도조 사제로
Yep.
사제기 켜와 가식 뉴몬 탐제 방법 방바디 타와마다와체 사제기 켜와 가식 타바레 슬라빈데 나가타에 GM이 응우시 토비디 타르바레 슬라비나 디다다 탈로바슈로다.
The second one, the second attribute of pacification, the mistaken consciousness around that would be to mistake its lack of completion for its completion. In terms of those states of absorption, we mentioned those four where you meditate, for example, on nothingness. So without completely vanquishing the afflictive emotions and their seeds, to mistake that surface level for the final thing. This is countered by the second attribute. Thorough pacification.
다 찬원배 록조라 칼레고르데 아니 동해기 차월 가식 담라 찬원바 타르바진 바스 다 힌두나라데 망고여레 수수 류레야 아니 두부담베이나 아니 타르바토고레스 디셰기여레 수수 류라 동해 뇽와데 아니 타르바레스다 근데기 동해기 차월 가식 뭐다 야면은 차와드제기 동해 말에 규르베 동해데 타르바진 빼나 다 사제기 차와 빼나단다 쩨메 응시에도 다 데르바 동해 규르베 동해르바 이나 도저야 차놈바진바 다디 디와 동해기 차와 가식라 차놈바진바 힌두나라든데 여러지란서 가시 동제섬간라 쳐나 저런 타버터지 동해기 차와 디 차놈바진 게 여러 동 메간라 쳐야 메간라 쳐야 아니 수불라 든데 디슈니 누구다야든 단다 허저라든데 여러 단다 지기도 왔던데 든데 지기도
자그럴로죠. 예.
든데 여러 단다 출룩 진이도 여러 단다디 드즈 타버진이도 여러 단다.
This third attribute of being sublime is a countermeasure to clinging to effects, similarly of cessation being cessation, in the sense that, some people believe that, some Hindu practitioners believe that through self-mortification one can attain liberation, through harming the body. That's one level. Or even, in a sense, in terms of the three types of suffering, mistaking the suffering of change for being that liberated state. To give an example, reaching that level of absorption of meditating on nothingness, mistaking that to be liberation, when in fact that level of absorption is also in the nature of change. So you cling to that. There are cases of those self-mortifications in India where it is believed that if you jump in a fire, if you put knives on the body, this is the method to become liberated. We can see some practitioners doing this in South India to this day. These are mistaken methods, mistaken approaches. No.
동해 세바요레스 야 간자질로 코란 수용 그랬어
가시데 didn't And then definite release or definite emergence is to counter the thought that, well, suffering could come back. Some people might think that, believe that.
저는 뒤 연구요라 가서 나 나가다 남시대 나가다 재미 응시도서 다 타바인 텐데 근데 응시도 누가도 냠도 아니 응시도 저도 아니 그런 하소인자 근데 비교하시면 내가 미단 준도단데 겨울엔 하고 요러 아니 다 동해 타바다 양자야 동해마도 동해 세셔다 양자양아 동해 수용고도 스타디 타바레 다 콘서딜라 타바 트리브로 받아 제가 타바 트리브레다 lam trubro da.
Yeah, so, definite release here, definite emergence, meaning that it is the case as a countermeasure to a temporal abating of suffering that we mentioned. The non-Buddhists could mistake for liberation when in fact it is not, so that they would see at the end of their meditation experience, they could be reborn in a lower realm as an animal and lose faith in their method so that suffering returns. Well, definite emergence counters that.
어디 다디네 니다 곡된 라이디 체주 신den게 타바마 투바디 고바시와 전웅이지 당기디 고바 딘데지 유나다 오네 동행레 텐드데베 타바당 아니 뇨몬다 세베세바 딘데지 유나다 만조 셈제르 고부도 다디 두비아기 누바 수술라민도 티 두비아 누바 산제르도 다체당에 디시데 산제지 고마토고도 삼삼당유디 네 찬주그 셈줄리 게용고요라
And then, having seen that true cessation is qualified with these four attributes of thorough pacification and so forth, in order to remove suffering and afflictions, one motivates to obtain that state of true cessation, and one does it at the behest for all sentient beings with an eye to Buddhahood, so then it becomes bodhicitta.
지단 다다 산지 공부한데 레다 뉴모 세베 타세다 레다 뉴모 세베 타 미네베 냥데지 톱지 용구요로다 덴데지 톱기 요나다 먼저 고구도 다 데토바 제발라 아니 람줄레 제고레 산지 공부 토발라 가지 코방으로 와다 코방을 코베 자오 가래 엔티무디지 마리벌 데네 아주 차단을 제네 당기 세워나시야 수민지 남도지 엔시시 풍부진와 디지털 간제 요간제는 양레지는 코드 유서들의 고물로 두기로 제가 니 인주장을 다 덴버도와지 덴지디 마세나나 아니 산제 공부 파션에 타르베 톱투에 레면도 제가 니 산제 공부 톱에 치드네 코베자와 코방고도 코방을 코베자와 방고도 스타 찬주 셈베기 아니 신디 돈이래야 퇴삼 제윤데 아니 디진 처럼 중딩 초섬 게로 찬주셈 귤리게와다 디진 람로 슈도 찬주셈 귤리게와다 디진 람 슈도다
Yeah. The Tangbo Zoklam, Chung Ding.
솔람 chung ding chimbo somjero 단다데 셔러닝 보응아나라 데타 가데가데 빠르가데 빠르상가데 보디세 데타 가데 당보디 찬준 솔람로다
Really, it comes back to what Nagarjuna says in the Root of Wisdom: cease karma and disturbing emotions. In order to do that, one needs a valid path consciousness of mind, because one is abandoning the root of cyclic existence and really seeing that the root of cyclic existence is grasping, or the ignorance, the unawareness that grasps at things being truly existent. In dependence on that, the invalid, disturbing thought obscurations of desirous attachment and aversion cease. Karma ceases to be accumulated, as is said by Nagarjuna. Yeah, as Nagarjuna says. And the jewel garland, as long as there is grasping at I and mine, there is disturbing emotions that arise, such as desire and aversion. In dependence on those two, karma is created and we suffer. So seeing that, the practitioner, with concern for that condition, sets out to uproot the root of cyclic existence. Chanju semparwa. Shengitung. Chanju semgitung.
Chanju she
Dinigi jawa.
semje shenla pembe chidi.
Ale. So therefore now there's a link here into concern for others' welfare. The Bodhisattva doesn't just, the practitioner doesn't just do this for oneself, but for the concern of others, one wants to uproot the root of cyclic existence. So then begins to enter the path of the Bodhisattva Trainee, The first of which is the path of accumulation, small, medium, and great, as alluded to in the Heart Sutra, Tayata Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhisattva. So that first Gati, right?
Gati Thangbuddha.
Yeah, the first Gati. First Gati.
제단 대체도 아니 다 배낭아서 딜라고요. 최담제 란신 유튜브에 동바레스. 임베 줌제디 땡종 임베 줌제지 아니 란신 유튜브 동바레스. 제단다 남바산제 시 덴바니 람탑시니 데부군이 세기도 시내가 군저 덴바도 단단데 군저 덴바스지 배나 탭디레 탭 코나 먼저 로야단 직치야디 군저 덴바레. 다 탭디 유진된데 망보실래 때네 투데요레스 메시지게 먼저 셈나라 칸데샤고르스 탭디 이 탭코랑 원에 자자자도 뭐 수줍된 요지 나와셔게요레 나와 나신지 요 말에 어디 두베 동안들라 탭지 땡기 동반이 라고요레스 수 단다디 탭 동바올람난 디그레로 디 단다디 셔런용면나라 수 동바오 세지고레 수 동바오 동반이 수소 세야데 네 대닝 오지를 동바타데 셰용고요로
In that notion then of the Heart Sutra, understanding that all phenomena lack intrinsic existence, with the reason applied of dependent arising, and very important in the context of Buddha Dharma, basis, path, and result. The basis is understanding the two truths, relative truth and ultimate truth, taking that as our basis. And then if we look at the example of a book being a dependent arising of the aforementioned reason we gave, that the book is the coming together of causes and conditions, but the way that the book appears to our mind is as if the book is 100% from its own side. Well, in the Heart Sutra we hear form is emptiness, emptiness is form, so that appearance, empty, are the two isolates of the one reality of the book.
제가 나한테 뒤에 당하는데 쇼베네 야라네 건다 많이 해서 오늘 삼로 가르던 거 열랍디 수수신라나야 암절을 지코데요 미기직 통데요 아니 디 먼저 원에디 통고요 말다 지 투미지 남도 도다지 직 통데게요다 근데 또 파자 먼저 샘디 레네 가 말이 파자베 레버 옹게 디 옹게 레제로 먼저 선글라스 잡나 정말 뭐뭐 통고도 대나시 먼저 선글라스 잡았다 다들 잡제 아니 디 야버데 도자리 랍데게로 근데 인지상갈라 다 양직 자와지 답변나 야니 돈이 남샤지 유다 요래 능원에 요바데다 단당 얘기 셈나를 샤다디니 저기요 말다 제가 디메위 인상 아니 딩아란저 처연나라 삼로디 땅토이나 편도신부 요래스로
So then in the context of the day from morning to night, you will think things by hearing them and seeing them. But in fact, you do not see reality. It is a conceptual overlay. And such a conceptual overlay is the result of imprints ripening in the mind, as if one was wearing sunglasses and seeing everything as blue. Okay, so there's a nominal good and bad out there, but that could be, but not as you are perceiving them to be.
제가
You overlay it.
말아서 단다 배나 나자디 갈라 미션제 심대 쉬우치고라 심대 쉬우치고 말아 심대 체네 심대 마셔봐다 삽삽 마셔보니 로가레스 먼저 망보지 데데도고요레스 그러봐 삽삽 chegore스 먼저 봐 나자 말레군에 수수수고 따보여 보자야다 아니 지밀레 되어지야다 그래서 삽삽디 chegore스 먼저 나자레 타네 삽삽 chegore스 삽삽 che봐다 심대 che보니 로가레 망보지게 띠띠샤레스로 워리시야디 심대치기 삽사치기 콩을 때 말해 워리시야디 수수 맞이버서 디펜 가르타 그래라 삽삽치야지 니지 칼라야 보사야 수부다 보야 보자야 밀레터치야디 니지 나자 요새 미즈즈 더마체 내갑지 더마치야다 아니 기시 나자들 레베이나가 가르치고 그래 딘데들 삽사치 디리 디 삽삽치야바당 심대체원이 로가르 디 여와체 그래서 당보들랑 안 들어
To give an example of the COVID thing that's here, there's kind of a worry around it, and then there's taking care around it. They're two different things, but we mix them. They're not the same. Of course, taking preventative measures, taking care to eat well, to do sensible things is one thing. But what tends to happen is we mix the care part with the worry part. And the only function of worrying is to make the mind upset. But the function of taking care is to eat well, perhaps, if you are really sick, not to mix or to not mix with those that are sick. And then if you do get sick, to recognize it, but not to mix those.
아니 단다 빼나 빼차셔나 알아서 선준을 그거 빌리는 코비드 오늘 코비드 이미 간시디 멤버들 도도 라와데 이지 제오라 다 이미 있네 양 먼저 단단 먼저 레요 뭐라 알아서 기실래나 알아서 삽삽치기 잉에 밀레도 마치야다 알아랑 아니 미 나서 나뇨뇨도 깨지팅아 자가라 자가다 비유도 나자 나뇨뇨도 깨지티라 콘서 나자 따든데 용고도 용배 카둘라 수수수 삼발 흘려셔야 돼 계속 셔려셔라고도 콘서로
알레 콘서
냠뇽 삼발 흘려요나 아니 우단에 내려오셔도 심랑감다셔나 아니 우단에 그런 카르도도 라고도 제가 늦어 냠뇽도 들레제 아니 삼발 흘려서야 되가나 배전적으로 대단 아니 학와르데 수수 나든데 여사회시고 밀레데와 맞다 마용아에서 마용하던 등하던 나자 지도스러 미딱 닝제도네 돼야 되라고 도저 제외는 삽삽체라고 근데 심대체는 나자 유나 같이 그래 나거나 같이 그래 나도 같이 그래 다 수마게도나 도처나 같이 그래서 디 심대로 와대 디 갈핑 그래로 제가 심대단 삽삽이 때리단제 되기도 저는 제 망고지게
might hear from the news of someone that's billionaires, because a billionaire COVID. When they say such and such a rich person's got COVID, it makes the news, or a doctor has. Okay, and then in the news, I've know some people in India and Tibet, COVID. They have COVID, and from their experience, what is important is to keep relaxed, because if you have an anxious mind, then that prevents you from being able to breathe and keep a relaxed mind. So there is that we always have to keep relaxed around it. And also there's compassion, having a compassion for those that do have it, taking care in that regard. But certainly, I shouldn't go to the supermarket. Worry 1, 2, 3, very counterproductive. Yeah, not to worry, but to take care. But that's kind of advice across the board. Don't worry. Yeah, your rallies going through difficulty. How's your worry going to help them?
심대치 용구로 받다 가서 용구도 알아. 하나 삼당에 심대 다가러버신 펜 가르다거든. 펜제 도면 대살때 응애지 면람잡 곰잡 이 밀 펜도체 딘데체나 아니 개워사그라 개워사버데는 콘솔 면람잖아 대 핑도 하다. 두스레다 디 핑도 하다.
I have experience of this, having left the parents. I was concerned. Worry was there. But then I thought, of what benefit is it to worry? So instead of that, I thought, good to do some aspirational prayers, to meditate, to help others and create virtue. This is of more benefit.
어디로 와제가 대체 다 하버드 아니 지 메제나 지 강의로 인데 다지 규진 간에 중임에 되게 땅고야 돼. 개좀 싫어더라.
Yeah. And in the context of our lives, when difficulties come, what are the causes and conditions behind them? Reflect.
제자다 전주의 심 줄레제네 아니 산제 고마 토고와들 네번째 사례 아니 코 산제 고마 토고라 코방 코에자와디 단다데레다 나세 데모도와 짐바딜라 데네 레사 레원 코코도 제자다 디 아니 민두 삼병아데 녜시니인데 제자 다 다음에 라 코아니인데 심라 직다지게요 다지 당아메와 차르고도 섬도 차그르 디유 알아서 다 데이터에 잡다 거인 상상데 다 상로단데 요 말아 오지 따디면나 땅아 가르쳐 그래라 재산디 좀 된데 그 돈이디 미 간주만 줄러 스마송에 줌진데라고 다제 그 도베 실려 디면나 다 레사님도 다 녀님도 아니 되는 거네 내 뉴에지스인데 레야 내가 요래라 다 가야면도 다이나 가르치는 디그레스니서 차 내가 요이자 좀 된데 타고서 당고 된데 그거 망고 송 안 당보 딱바 요 말에 미다과 레스도 칼레 치도 송제 타마들라 다 저라기 이지제 다디 요 말달라디 선드니 시날리고라라 이나 테메 말에 테네 중에 가디 요레
테네 중에
수수게 심나리 이지 첸조디 요 말에 스틸라윈디 테네 라트용 거라 니 테네 다디 내가 자게 요레 생각들어
Then slowly with the generation of the vast mind of bodhicitta, Buddhahood is definitive. One still has to uproot cyclic existence, which we said was clinging to the self in an erroneous way, thinking it's truly existent, upon which we create karma. So we have to recognize the object to negate there. And that object of negation is self, and the result is the realization of non-self. Scary, wouldn't it be? To think that things or oneself is in the nature of non-self, because suddenly there's no protection whatsoever. Well, in that sense, Buddha took tremendous care not to teach that directly, straight up, straight on. He would have taught that in a sequential manner, in terms of there being a dependent arising, there being an impermanence of self. So that the nominal self, okay, we're saying that functions. What we are negating is a self that is truly existent, that is erroneous.
다디 삼다 아니 돈이 또로와 조남네가 돈이라 이 정보 텐좀사 되네 이지점이 코아니 아니 줌젠라 되네 딘조인베 줌젠이 다들 돈이도 지금 리고 망고 쇼여라 이런 디덜로 좀 시도나 야고여라 다시 리고세로 당 아니 지 내시 리고세로 덴데 리고스나 리고 쇼여라 리고 지금 또게 돈이를 해봐니 돈이도네 돈이를 메베 검중 너타바다 아니 졸람네 야 포토고 여래라
Then, cultivating that valid mind that has insight into truth, wisdom, consciousness, realizing emptiness, we want to realize the lack of true existence of things. First, there is doubt around it, and then there's the doubt abates, and then your mind is starting to tend towards the fact, and that can only come about if you study dependent arising. And while you're backing that tendency to see that phenomena lack inherent existence through the reasons of dependent arising, there's so many reasons here that are going to validify your support of emptiness in terms of dependent arising. Gisela mentioned them. So then there's the wisdom. I haven't finished.
Yeah.
Then there's the realization of the wisdom consciousness that realizes emptiness, and slowly as your understanding of emptiness deepens, you move from that initial path of accumulation to the path of joining.
다 드네 돈이 무슨 더 용디 안 통람서 그것도 거를 한데 내 실은 따야다 가디에서 가디니와디 졸람체 빠라가디서야 되네 통람진다 대방 무슨도 통와서와 되다
Then slowly one traverses to the path of seeing, the direct insight into emptiness. First gati, accumulation. Second one, path of training. Third one, paragati.
빠라가디죠
Paragati, path of seeing. That's the one.
지상다 람덴서야 돼. 다 람덴군에 되다. 람덴서야 돼. 단다 덴바시 타마게 람덴서야 돼. 돈이 무슨 도베 람덴 어디 람덴이다.
Right. And then this path of seeing is what we talk about in context of the Four Noble Truths as being the fourth noble truth of the path. That is it.
다 되네 아니 레 코발이 겨fen 레서드 사고요 말에 아니 되베 뉴먼데 제데 건데 주세요 말에 아니 단단한저다 남바산집에 추군조 군조 섬있는 추군조 사야데 어디에 긴두 군조 사야데 대요래 다 디네가블라다 전에 거랑 가서 그래 라완로지 가나가서 톱사로 코네로
And then there is no new karma created when you've cultivated that valid true path. Afflictions have been destroyed, so they don't come back. You obtain that second of the Dharma jewels, of the jewel of Dharma. You become an Arya Sangha.
다디 네 동ning 무슨 도바 되게 니 로되게 ingwenye cheje de dobgi ani nyomo sabenda chebe pangbala ngwenye chigo yore de pangbe dobgi ani nyomo sabenda chebe chawadila ani gogden sta gogden ngone thobya de dine thobgu yorda
Yeah, and then that state of mind that we define of being free of afflictions and its seeds is true cessation, the third noble truth, the cessation of those sufferings and the seeds.
다 람된 그 고된디 다가랑 고된 레벨 당한서 동ning 무슨 도에 파주기 람된스 요래로
Yeah, so when we understand that fourth noble truth of true paths, it is the method by which the Aryas cultivate the view of the truth.
다디 간산 다음에 락바 무슨 도에 람딜라 아니 람된 락바체 당기디 람된 참무체 람된 타라니 용거로
And then again, that truth of the path can be divided into gross and subtle. Gross is that non-self of persons, and then subtle is non-self of phenomena.
다디나 신다 단다디 람덴레야 시제 디네 람파베 템바오스 니 단다 도나라야다 람 용어월데 아니 람 곰버 차스로와 다람디 차와체 곰바 차르메스데 람 곰바보다 곰자다 두두 상마 아니 템바 마토레스 셰운디 차와 데부디 제발라 돈바스제 람딘라 숨체로
And again, as with our other three previous truths, there are three stages of true paths. First, it's entity. We are recognizing what it is. So, cultivate true path. And then the action is to actually cultivate it. No, sorry, the first one is to recognize true path. The action is to cultivate it. And thirdly, the result, meditate on it and cultivate it until there's no more to cultivate.
지난다 딜라 배버숨다 남자 중이고네 네 디시 충고 거래서 배버숨에서 ngol 되고 차월 되고 차월 되고 배버숨제 중이데 덴바 실레야 숨숨숨지니 시숨 중이로 딜레야네 배워서는 남자 중이고네 네 최주로 거래서 다 된다 되리다.
So this is how we come to these 12 things. You have these three stages of each of the four truths. Firstly, first stage, recognizing the entity of it, the nature of it. Second stage, the action. Third stage, the result. Each of those three, applying them to each of the four truths, means the 12 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, as it says here.
다 람덴기 체주시죠로 람덴이 오디체 다베나 람덴 락바드 자비나 간선다메 무슨도베 람덴암 또니 무슨도베 람카룬데 최진로 다디 딜레야다 체주시샤 람덴 tele cheju shishayendirwa.
So remember we said that in terms of the truth of the path, we could look at it from a gross level of cultivating the awareness to negate the self of persons. Again, looking at the four, tangbora wagisla lam.
당보 de lam yindirwa. Tawa tuwa chiwe lam yi. Tawa tuwa chiwe. Tawa tuwa sidi. Ta gogden tawa chinyi lam reso warda. Tawa tuwa
Path,
chiwe.
because it is said to be the path to the state of liberation.
Rigba yinde nyomo be ngonye chiwe shirsta. Nyomo ge ngonye chiwe yo resro.
Nyonyesina?
Ngonye sidi antidote.
Oh, sorry. And then the second one, awareness or rigpa, because it is the awareness that acts as the antidote.
Duwe namba yinde simjinelu chinji malo batuwa. Chedan duwe namba yinde simjinelu chinji malo. Simjinelu kare tongbanyi rwa. Tongbanyi chinji malo batuwa. Teresta.
Right. The third one of accomplishment, because one accomplishes a non-erroneous consciousness vis-a-vis seeing the final mode of abidance of the mind, which is void.
Tene ngewa jimbe namba yinde dunge tense chewe lami mesis. Dunge tendu sewa. Chinyi ki lam. Ngewa jimbe yinde.
Our fourth attribute being nejin, deliverance. There is thorough deliverance.
Ta dine de la lokshu shi de la lokwa shi je yorwa. Lokwa shi tande cheju shi de la lokwa shi yorwa.
And of course, to each of those four attributes, there are invalid or erroneous consciousnesses as well that have to be negated.
당보 de la talam yeme de zimba. Ta talam sinyi de pe chune yo mares tawe lam sinyi de.
If you cling to the notion, there's no path to liberation, this is mistaken. First one. Path, awareness, accomplishment, definite emergence. Deliverance or definite emergence is fine. Yeah. Path, awareness, accomplishment, and deliverance. Or as it says here, definite elimination. Both are fine.
Ta 당보 de disonga talam yeme de zimbe chirse.
Yeah, so first one would be to think that there is no path to liberation. This is mistaken. Yeah, it is in an erroneous mind.
Ta niwa de la ane dame do we ishi de talam de rig mares. Dame do we ishi talam rig mare. Dame yo mare da yo resu yoro.
All right. So erroneous awareness, the second one, would be to think that there is, kind of a path, a valid path, but self exists. The self of the person exists.
Da dine sumba de la samding kyawa gashik talam de zimba. Chazan samding kyawa gashik chazan. Samding de kyawa gashik talam res, tarwe lam res, shegu yora.
Erroneous accomplishment, the third one, would be to mistake the concentrations for liberation.
And Shiva de la Dunge Tense Chini Talam said yo maris. Dunge Tense Chini Talam yo maris. Dunge Tense yo maris.
The fourth one would be to think mistakenly that there's no thorough deliverance or overcoming the two obscurations.
Or the Yedita, Dinjimida Chuduki, Loksho Shida, Nyambo Chuduk, that did you did it? Dinjimida Chuduk said.
So these are the 16 moments or 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths and the countermeasures how they are countermeasures applying to their erroneous minds.
Da denda di tholam ji negap su toning musum de to ne ane nyomo ba de chaza pa pang nyomo pa yon de ane sajeba ne kolam ne sajeba ne nyundi pa pang bo top ane sajeba ko chuwa de la ya ane shidi pa ya la kozum ande je de shidi sidu da dinzi ki paja dan jeba de wa lendek namja tashi ta chinya tuzo sheba la paji diwa de ane de pang top de ane sanje ji komba sa de ta sang sa da yung wor diwa sang sidu kala wasna ane nyomo de shije diwa tin je pa sang ge sidu ane tabdan shero ge tokwa lungdo yunde tamje ya ge wa sang ge sa ane parga de parasanga de sa de kolamche bodhisattva da ane chanju ji shizu chanju chambo ta de lamga de shere de nero That's on yes.
So then, on the path of seeing, having removed afflictions on a gross level, and then up to the path 8, still working with removing those grosser levels of afflictions. And then on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, starting to work with these subtle levels of obscurations that are the instinctual imprints of grasping at things existing truly. Once those are removed, the stage, the state of Buddhahood is reached. So we have this translation of the term Buddha, Sangye in Tibetan. Sang, on the first hand, is the clearing away of afflictions and the stains left over by those afflictions or imprints, the tendencies to grasp at things being true. And then on the latter hand, Je, the vast notion of the qualities of the mind being accomplished. Bodhisattva, the last part of our mantra, means that is the state of Buddhahood. You're Buddha now.
다들 단다디 녜디마 도디 롱드디 최고 무슨 송세기 뒤제들라 공화대 상고 미 맞지 아니들라 하단 하마이다 취사다 제베 아니 딘데 다니니 난 딘데 요래 다르바
The direct recipients of this teaching of Buddha were the 5 close disciples, these monks, but also in the retinue were gods and, as it says here, what is it, smell eaters? Those ones, yeah. Gandharvas, correct, yeah.
아야 다 당에 마 룽디 직전 샤고로 지단 룽 만체도 도서 다이나데 고드네 마 시카실 하데 야관에 마시지 룽디 르르시 직전 곳으로.
So I have kind of been given the transmission as we read through the text, but I will do it again from the beginning till end so that we get that reading transmission.
자게데 담아 자다 수다 벽에데 쉬고래도 탐제진발라 차제로 이게 다게 되어지나 선제 좀 된데 오라나지 transo 마베르다 제나나 쇼디 진에 좀 된데 예가데 gen나나 가제와 gen나다가 마데베 쳔나나 디니 동해 법에 된바와 시주신 일라 제와나 미제소 셰바다 레바다 로다 다디 간저디 나라 마테와 튜스세디 당나 마시베 시세디 삼로당 다나 야부도 와봐
It's important to understand the lines that regarding things that I had not previously heard, I reflected thoroughly. It is good to think like that.
셰바다 레바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마데베 쳔나라 디니 동해 디니 그 동해 군조 디니 동해 고바와 디니 동해 고바 도가 라모 시추시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바다 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마마데베제나나 동해 보베 덴바닝에 umbrashewa 연세shewa 저와제주시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마마데베제나나 동해 군조 바베 덴바디 바셰바 방바샤와 시추시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바다 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마마데베제나나 동해 고바셰와 바베 덴바데랑에 umbrashewa 원숨데 저와시 주시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바다 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마데베 쳔나나 동해 고바도에 람바베 덴바디 바셰와 고바제와 시추시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바다 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마데베 쳔나나 동해 바베 덴바디 바셰와 요세시소 시추시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바다 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마데베 쳔나나 동해 군조 바베 덴바디 바셰와 방서 시추시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바다 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마데베 쳔나나 동해고 동해라고 바셰베 바베 덴바디 바셰와 무슨데 제소 시추시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바다 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 마데베 쳔나나 동해고 바르드베 람 바베 덴바디 바셰와 고바서 시추시 일레제바나 미게서 셰바다 리바다 로다 도바제소 gen나다 지세 바베 덴바시와 데나라 데다 렌솜데 데 남바 주니스 고베 미마제와 셰와 마레 다 리바 마예 로 마예 도바 마제와 데세 데나라 다 주베지 데다 창바다 계정다 다저다 지고다 하다 미제와 대와 도와다 예와 종와다 미데바라도 도와다 진실로도 되 신제만데 너무 유제게 런다 예라나면 양도 버저지 좀 봐서 상제도 좀 봐셔 예론다가 간에 파고에 된 것이고 되나라데다 편 렌숨도 되데 넘버 중에서 거에 미시 신세와다 리바다 로다 도과제와 되나라 하던 저지 되는 상바다 저기 저는 지고다 지고다 라제 디 지구세지도 돼 아직도 많잖아요 지구세들에 지구세데 아니 도스레 먼저 Dovane ni Kavalendu Dovane Sulaki, Dovane Sumilaki, Sumdosanga.
Yep.
And it's Sune Sulaki, Sune Devalaki, Sune Sumilaki, Trudosanga. Sumene Sulaki, and the Trux Sumdosa, Gudosanga, Kigusa de Lagayores.
When the word person is alluded to here in terms of transmigrating, one goes from the desire realm to, could again go to the desire realm, but from desire to form and then formless realms. And then from the formless realm back to the form realm, from the form realm back to the desire realm. So each of the three, each having 3 permutations, making 9 possibilities. That's what qualifies a transmigrator, a person.
Tada mijewa dele dowa dan yawa jowa dan midemwa dan rabde dowa dan shinjelo dan dewe seman din dewa juji. Kelong da ngen din lana me yanzo we shi jong ma zo ba san je so. Da che zang ngen san je so sirwa jimde de nga san je so song do che zang konzo tiwa ti ro jiran san je gomba to so nge da nga san je gomba to so de song do ro.
Gishla ko yo de san je so. Tama de
Tamara mari dan da de Jugu dan de no gelon.
Oh yeah.
Me ba zo ba lana me yang do ba zo ba shi gong ba zo ba san je shi.
Oh yeah.
Chue je nam dan de na ka ze wa che dan de ba gu de ni ya sen. Ha je di chue nam la da zo. Ta de lo tan da de nge lana me yang do ba zo ba shi gong ba zo ba san je so de jim de nga san je so chi ji.
Yeah.
Song do wa de shi shi na de kon zo tiwa ti ro san je so nge ya me na chue 야면은 콜리지 지고 차서 야면은 산지 공부 톱승에 스토드 당아 산지 공부 톱승.
Okay.
어디 숨어요?
As we mentioned previously, Buddha's disciples asked Buddha, have you obtained the truth? Have you obtained enlightenment or the status of a wheel-turning king? To which Buddha replied, I've obtained enlightenment. So it says at the bottom of verse 1, I guess it's /14, I'd escaped from it, severed ties with it. I've been delivered from it. I dwelt extensively within a mind free of error. Monks, I then had the knowledge that I had fully awakened to unsurpassed and perfect Buddhahood. That is it.
최근 남자들 가져와는 세상에 봐 구시고는 하지 리시도 다 하배 망보도가 민알레면 라춘이니 망보 쉬지도가 아니 최근 민두미지 팀어던 저 계속 이내 좀 되지 달 하도도 줄어야 또 같은데 계도가 근데 좀 되지 세대는 구시고는 딱게 쉐버도 결혼 신성에서 봐 최지 출근 신상 좀 되게 군가 다 라서 당에 시에서 투주를 지르고 구시고는 최지 군 신상 지나시는 창마 신성에서 창마 신성 아니 대화시와 군 텔라서 텔라서 다 아니 다 최신스 시험은 탐제 신스 시험은 다지 산제 탐제를 찾아야 산제가 연대 도관이 고야 되는데 당할 구샤 채고야 되는데 총선 이제 송도야 돼요.
So then as this is said in 115, when the Blessed One had given this Dharma discourse, Venerable Kaujinya, along with 80,000 gods, so many gods were present at that teaching. They achieved the Dharma eye, stainless, free of dust with regard to phenomena. And then the Buddha, the Bhagavan, addressed that venerable monk. Did you understand the Dharma? To which he replied, I understood. And then again asking, did you understand? Did you understand? Emphatically, to which he replied, I understood. It's like saying, did you get it all? Did you really get it? To which he replied, I did. And then, because of that, he's now known as his previous name, but with the affixed wisdom name.
Sidan Denba Gushi Gurun, Chugun Shiba, Tiche, Sidan Denba Gushi Gurun, she Tigla Dasu, Tazo, and Sidan Denba Gushun, Chugun Shinso, Shija, Tigla. Nujin Nalanda, Wajedo, Water, Jumden, De, Warren, transformated Daji, Nazu, Lensum, Deva, number Junior, Yologo. Gejon Dan, Damse, Dan Ladan, Dan Sangba, Dan Sujan, Chidun, the Chu, Dan Tumba, Magoro, Jewa Mangbola, Pemba, Jewa Mangbola, Deva, Dan Jidin. Ningzewa dan la dan min nan je tuan dan penpa dan dewe je kowe le ri wa ngompa be she lama yin jiri yung zi she. Sik la da je nu jin je da tuan ne nang ka we la ju we nu jin dan je je ri she dan sum je zo sum pe la dan tap de dan kan de dan tu ka da shi duan je la dan. Ge je de da dan tang je de da dan yu zang de da ge je dan tang je de yu zang de la sang pe ji den ju ba den da da sa. Sang re je la nan yang da do wa che da do wo da jim den de ye wo ra na zi chang san me ri da lin sum de de nang ba jun yi shi ju ko lo gong ken la. Damse dan la dan lam yu dan sang ba su jian ji den de shu de mu go mu go de jiao meng wu le pen ba de jiao meng wu le de wo da. Ji den la nin ze wo dan la dan min nan ju tuan dan pen ba dan de we go le ru mu zi pe je. Hama ye je re yong zi nyang zi shi yang zha su jim den de yo wa ra na zi chang san me ri da ji na zi lin sum de de nang ba jun yi shi ju ko lo go. Yo de ne ju jian nan ran de la chu ju ko lo go shi ci la da su chu ju ko lo go do zo so. Che zang da de de la den de song yong do da jim den de ji. Ana ngar zambuling de la tan de su jian chue ma song ba ji da song ba re sro. La war de da gu shi gu de na nga de ju la ya chue song ba ta ran la da to ba ji. To ba ji ne ne jun dan da de nga de ge du je shen la ya chue song yong de de zu ju le to ba ji. Do she de to ba ji be da yun do de ma tan da. Do se yun se de o teres da chu ju ko le yun se teres da.
So then Lord Buddha states that I taught the Dharma as had not yet been taught in this world. And as it was taught on that very spot, in that very moment, this monk, Kardinya, realized the truth. Similarly, the 5 monks in the retinue of Buddha realized the truth, and they in turn would have taught that same teaching to other disciples. And then that is what we mean by continuum of the blessing that exists to this day.
Acharanzo di gobi di tari chuzo la nawa shuji gobi susu shalfa che sansan la do de testes lo shana ya wish.
So to please take this copy with you today to your place where you are, and then from time to time read it would be good.
Ni sanje ge sungji susu nang la yuna chinlap chimbora da ro.
And even having the blessings of the Buddha's speech in one's home, great blessing.
Acharanzo inji to ne tsaji lo shana ro.
Let's read together in English one more time. Homage to the Omniscient One. One time. At that time, the Blessed One spoke to the group of 5 monks. Monks, regarding things that I have not previously heard, as I reflected thoroughly, the vision arose, the insight, the knowledge, understanding, and realization. This is suffering, the truth of noble beings. Monks, regarding things that I have not previously heard, as I reflected thoroughly, the vision arose, and the insight, the knowledge, understanding, and realization arose. This is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Monks, regarding things that I have not previously heard, as I reflected thoroughly, the vision arose, and the insight, knowledge, understanding, and realization arose. Which I acknowledge I should comprehend suffering, that truth of noble beings. Monks, regarding things that I have not previously heard, as I reflected thoroughly, the vision arose, and insight, knowledge, and understanding, realization arose. Which I acknowledge I should relinquish the rage and suffering. Monks, regarding things that I have not previously heard, as I reflected thoroughly, the vision arose, the insight, knowledge, understanding, as I reflect entirely, arose the insight, the knowledge, understanding, realization arose. With higher knowledge, I should cultivate leading to cessation. Months regarding things that I had not previously heard, as I reflected thoroughly, arose the insight, months regarding things that I had not previously heard. As I reflected thoroughly, the vision arose, the insight, knowledge, understanding, realization arose. With higher knowledge, I have limited origin of suffering and truth of noble beings. Months regarding things that I had not previously heard. As I reflected thoroughly, the vision arose, insight, knowledge, understanding, realization arose. With higher knowledge, I have realized the cessation of suffering, the truth of noble beings. Months regarding things that I had not previously heard. As I reflected thoroughly, the vision arose, insight, knowledge, understanding, truth of noble beings. Months until I had achieved the vision, insight, knowledge, understanding, realization of these four truths of noble beings that are termed the living three phases. Amongst living beings, including Maras, the Brahmins, as many descents from Brahmas, from its gods and humans. Being delivered from it, nor did I dwell extensively with a mind free from error. Months I did not have the knowledge fully awakened since the past birth to Buddhahood. Months while I had achieved the vision, insight, knowledge, understanding, realization, in these four truths of noble beings in three phases with 12 aspects. I was free from this world with its devas, from its living beings, including Maras, Brahmas, as well as men descents and Brahmas, from its gods and humans. I had escaped from it, severed ties with it, and been delivered from it. I dwelt extensively with a mind free from error. Monks then had a knowledge that I had fully awakened to one's past and perfect Buddhahood. When the Blessed One had given this Dharma discourse, Venerable Kardinya, along with 80,000 gods, achieved the Dharma vision that is free from dust and stainless without phenomena. The Blessed One now asked the Venerable Kardinya, Kardinya, did you understand Dharma? Blessed One, he replied, I understood. Did you understand? Did you understand? Blessed One, he replied, I understood, I understood. Because Venerable Kardinya has understood the Dharma, Venerable Kardinya should be known as Atjana. At that point, the terrestrial Yakshas called out, Venerable Kardinya has understood the Dharma, and they continued, friends in the deer park at Visavadana by Varanasi, the Blessed One has turned the wheel of Dharma in three phases in 12 aspects, has turned the wheel of Dharma in a way that no innocent or Brahma, no Mara or Brahma in the world could ever do in accord with the Dharma. He has done so for the benefit of many beings, for the happiness of many beings, out of love for the world, and for the welfare, benefit, and happiness of gods and humans who flourish, and the demigods will be on the way. As the voices of the terrestrial Yakshas rang out, at that very moment, in that very instant, at that very time, the news passed to the selection of Yakshas, as well as to the gods in the heaven of the four great kings, the heaven of the 33, the heaven free from strife, the heaven of joy, the heaven of delighting in emanations, the heaven of making use of others' emanations, and all the way to Brahma realm. Thus also the gods in the Brahma realm announced, friends in the deer park at Visavadana by Varanasi, The best one has turned the wheel of Dharma in 3 phases with 12 aspects. He has turned the wheel of Dharma in a way that no medicine or Brahma, God, Mara or Brahma in the world could ever do in accord with the Dharma. He has done so for the benefit of many beings, for the happiness of many beings, out of love for the world and for the welfare, benefit and happiness of gods and humans. Hence the gods will flourish and the demigods will be on the wane. In the deer park at Risavadana by Varanasi, the best of one turned the wheel of Dharma in 3 phases and 12 aspects. Therefore, this Dharma teaching was named Turning the Wheel of Dharma. This completes the Sutra of the Wheel of Dharma.
Oh yeah, that on the dedication doing right. I'm doing around the Geva. That the Chanicho, Geva should say that. And Geva did that to do come or she gave us out that the Ne Dishi Chungo, the Chug, Yamlin, the Tanda Zambilin, the Nede over the Pa. During Buneja, ne that Mimangbo. Me that Zambilin Nyogdosuni meet is a Semnalaya, ne Chug Chinlap Juje, ne Semna Ninjidang. And Chizo Kurambe, Ninja the Dembe Chizochi, Zambilin, Ninja the Dembe Chizochi. Chawa Juji, some Melam Skip, no Warding Ranzo Mongolaya. The Dishi Chungo, Churnamne, Javan Jawachi Chumazen, Dishi Dog Waters of Kane, John and Nudis and the Tamja Jula. Any Judge, you show some. What the name Melam was captured, and down the teacher was in some of the Mr. Toji.
I'd like to especially say thank you to everyone, and also the fact that we have listened to this teaching, we have accrued a vast amount of merit. No need to mention, we dedicate that. The Four Noble Truths, this teaching will remain a long time in this world, and also in the minds of the troublemakers of the world, may great compassion be born. In short, may our environment be endowed with compassion, And then secondly, that the Four Noble Truths, this teaching, remain for kalpas and kalpas, but that the insights of which are generated in the minds of all sentient beings. Please dedicate like that.
Oh, yeah, that's
Page 30.